Thank you. We're well past the time on that line. We're going to go to Mr. Scott for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Neufeld, for coming. I just wanted to go through a couple of quick questions just to get us on the right track. It's true, I think, from your testimony and your report, and I just want to confirm this, that you did not recommend eliminating vouching. You also recommended an expanded use of voter identification information cards.
That's
Is that correct? And in terms of the problem with irregularities that you very carefully documented, am I right in thinking that you proposed a whole series of remedies?
I proposed a series of remedies, mostly administrative, for the 2015 election, and some legal changes to enhance the ability of Elections Canada to hire people in an orderly way, in order to compensate them in an appropriate way, and to make sure that they are supervised appropriately.
Great. At any point, has the minister, to your knowledge, in his public remarks, ever cited anything in your report to deal with these kinds of remedies that you were suggesting?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you think it's fair to say that the minister has been very selectively quoting your report in order to create the impression that fraud is both a problem and likely?
I think he has been selectively reading and quoting from my report.
Thank you. I wonder if the following quotation from the minister from February 6, where he says, "The Supreme Court has recognized that the irregularities are too high, as did the Neufeld report commissioned by Elections Canada. As a result, the Fair Elections Act would protect the integrity of the vote by ending the practice of vouching as a form of identification." Is this one of the examples of a invocation of your report to create the impression that getting rid of vouching follows from your report? Is this something you would consider not an exactly fair way to link your report to his remedies?
I don't think it's a fair interpretation of what my report recommended or what it contained.
Thank you. I'd like to also ask whether in your report, where you set out a number of possible ways to improve recruitment and training, both in relation to administrative changes for 2015 and much more broadly along the same lines Elections Canada is already prepared to do with the New Brunswick model, whether or not Mr. Mayron responded at all to your report and whether he accepted the key recommendations about how to proceed.
Yes, in the published version of the report, which I understood all of you received, and in the version that's online on Elections Canada's website, the response of Marc Mayron is contained right in the report. Specifically with the 12 recommendations I made, there's a detailed response. He didn't agree with all my recommendations, but by far the majority he did. And there's also a response following the executive summary. And so, yes, Mr. Mayron has been on record, endorsing the work and endorsing the majority of the recommendations that I made.
Was the minister or any of his officials ever in touch with you to discuss your report and to go into detail about what the appropriate response might be to your findings about irregularities?
I was waiting for that call and it never came.
I'm very, very surprised at that. It's quite consistent with the stellar job of consultation this minister has carried out from the beginning. What kind of question is that?
Ignore him.
Read it 3 times, so what do you think? Well, get rid of the substitute member and then we won't have this. So, in terms of by-election compliance, the minister also likes to say things like the following. Mr. Speaker, quote, this is in response to a question, if he thinks it can just be fixed, why does he not read in the Neufeld report where that was tried? It states, and then it quotes you, during 2 of these elections, by-elections, quality assurance programs involving on-site conformity advisors were applied. However, vouching irregularities still averaged 21% during these monitored elections. This indicates that overly complex procedures cannot be remedied simply by improved quality assurance. Is it the case that your recommendations, some of your administrative recommendations, would not have been applied in those by-elections?
You need to have the context of the compliance advisors and their role. Nothing changed in process. Nothing changed in terms of the forms. Nothing changed in terms of the training. It was all as it was in 2011. What changed was there was a lot more oversight. The oversight itself isn't what did it. What needed to happen, and I was very clear in my report about this, is that the administrative process needs to take a look at what the legislation requires and be simplified, streamlined. All the forms and all the instructions need to be made consistent and in absolutely clear, plain language. The training needs to be considerably improved. It all needs to be tested and be made sure that it works. And that, in a combination, can really, really improve the compliance level. Simply having a bunch of people wandering around taking notes on whether people are doing it correctly or not and intervening with their supervisors if they're not isn't enough. And that's the statement I was trying to make. If you read the whole report, you get that context. If you selectively take a footnote, you don't.
Thank you. And the last thing is, am I correct in recalling in the report that I've read many times that you recommended getting rid of the role of political parties in the recruitment of election day workers so as to enhance both training and both the quality of recruitment and training?
There's a number of issues here. One of them is fundamentally one of the principles, and this is endorsed all over the world, is that election administration should be administered neutrally. And there's really no role for partisans handling ballots. There's certainly a role for partisans scrutinizing the handling of ballots, scrutinizing the registration process, and scrutinizing everything that goes on in the voting place. But it's not appropriate for partisans who get appointed late in the game to be what the chief electoral officer has to depend on as his workforce.
Thank you.
We have fixed election dates now, and one of the great advantages, I was the chief electoral officer in British Columbia when the first...
Mr. Neufeld?
Sorry.
We're well past Mr. Scott's time. I try to give you a chance to finish your thought, but the members of our committee love to ask a question with their time absolutely run out so that you get to take more time, and we will go through that route today.